Please join me in the prayer of preparation. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Reverend Linford, it is an honor to be in your church, and it's an honor to stand on your pulpit. You mentioned you want to be a parishioner this morning. I can't tell you plural, how there are days where I so enjoy simply being a Jew in the pew. How I can relate. You know, it's very funny. It's cliche that for many of us will say, as I get older. I think I've come to a point in my life where I can say, now that I am older, I want to share with you something that has been a bit of a change, a metamorphosis in my life. I have really grown fond of the book of Leviticus. The Levitical order, Aaron, the priesthood. And for much of my life, it was a head scratcher. I had the distinct privilege of studying informally with the late Rabbi, Professor Jacob Milgram. And for a time, he was a Congregational rabbi, and then he became an academic. He was the head of Near Eastern Studies at the University of California. And he would share with his group that as a Congregational rabbi, given that there's a cyclical reading, that come the time when the community / the Jewish community writ large would read from the book of Leviticus, he would want to hide under his lectern. And that prompted him to become, a little oversimplified, but largely become an academic and try to unearth some of the jewels that are found in the book of Leviticus. And I stand before you this morning and I can relate. I can share that. I've really grown fond of the book of Leviticus. One of the leitmotifs, the needle that is threaded throughout the book, is the concept of holiness. And the topic that I chose to share with you this morning is the spiritual uplift and moral importance of holiness. We don't often speak in terms of holiness, and I think that's patently unfortunate. Maybe it's too abstract. Or for some of us, maybe we feel it has the connotation of being holier than thou. I don't know. Holiness, I would argue, is the source of many of the religious and ethical principles that define Jewish tradition, and by extension, given Jesus' lineage, Christianity. Jesus was a Jew. Think about it for a second. Kindness as an expression of holiness. Being a person of integrity as an expression of holiness. Sexual probity as an expression of holiness. Humanity towards animals and concern for nature as a form and an expression of holiness. Holiness in the way that we treat our bodies. The universal principle that Michael mentioned, love your neighbor as yourself, with the biblical postscript, Ani Adonai, I am God. Rudolf Otto, who was a Lutheran theologian and philosopher, published a book, perhaps his most famous book, entitled The Idea of the Holy. It was published in 1917. And listen to this, it's still in print. And in this book, he argued, we're not just biological creatures. We respond to the mystical. We have an innate drive to that which is holy, all of us, irrespective of your own religious identity. And as Fernanda read this morning, one of my favorite quotes in a book that I am increasingly more fond of, in the book of Leviticus, illustrates the importance of seeking holiness in your lives. I'm going to reread it, and I'm going to refer to the Hebrew because I think it's emphatic. Let me explain. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the whole Israelite community, and say to them the following. Kidoshim tihiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. Every translation, I don't care the language, is an interpretation. And even for native speakers of a given language, whatever it is that we say, whatever it is that we write, it often cries for further elaboration and interpretation. But the Hebrew here, the verb form, is so intensive. Kidoshim tihiyu. It's referred to as a tzivui, a command form. I expect you to be holy. But here's the thing, it is so demonstrably in the plural. All of you, every one of us should strive for the holy, incorporate holiness into our lives. Don't abdicate holiness to religious leaders. You do it. That's what the text is saying. Kidoshim tihiyu, that's the Hebrew. You do it. Don't rely on the prophets. Don't rely on the judges, on the kings, on the priests, the reverends, the rabbis, the religious leaders. Don't rely on them. Don't. Sounds so self-deprecating. You can rely on them. You do it. You do it, all of us, individually. Now begs a question. What is holiness? How can we unpack that? Let me offer you the beginning of a working definition of what is holiness. That which is set aside. Don't think of holiness as we have to levitate out of here. It's staring us right in the face. That which is set aside. Think of it in a more mundane, and that's not pejorative, a more mundane paradigm. That which is set aside. How about a piece of jewelry? It may not even have great market worth, but you set it aside because it's holy to you, because it's important. It might be part of an heirloom. How about a special book, photographs, a certain physical place? But there's more to it than that. The challenge of being holy is finding the holy in the ordinary, finding holiness, sacredness in things that aren't always set aside. Never met him, but he taught at the seminary of which I studied in New York, the Jewish Theological Seminary, Columbia University. Max Kedushin. He wrote a book called Organic Thinking, and he coined the phrase normal mysticism, finding the holy / sacred in the everyday, finding it in the mundane, and mundane is not pejorative. Saying a prayer when you hear an emergency siren. I'm not standing here holier than thou. I may be on a platform, but I'm not higher than anyone here. And I will tell you, I have to work on myself when I hear a siren and I'm in a rush and I go, nuts. I don't say that. I have to train myself not to say that. I hear an emergency siren and I say, please God, help the police get the bad guy. Help the ambulance bring someone to the hospital for help. How about when you take medication? Oh, I take 10 pills in the morning. Thank God I can take 10 pills in the morning. Thank you. And I pray they continually help me. How about going to work? Oh, I have to work. How about, wow, I get to work? Doesn't that change the access? How about being with friends and family? You don't have to be maudlin. You don't have to be hyper sentimental. How about waking up in the morning? Is that mundane? Maybe it is, but you know what? That's not bad. There was a 20th century theologian known and admired by Jews and Christians alike, Abraham Heschel. And he says we should divide holiness in two spheres, holiness in space and holiness in time. What is holiness in space? Physical space. This church is physical space. This is holiness in space. A synagogue, a cemetery. You may not realize it, you may not think about it, but a place of work where jobs are being created, where people are empowered to make a living so as to put food on their tables. A court, a hospital, a supermarket, holiness in space. Our nation's Oval Office. It could be a place that you individually deem holy. My dear wife, my bride, when I proposed to her, we called the site Proposal Point. It's holy to us. You have no idea where it is, and I'm not sharing that with you. Press me. I'll tell you another time. What is holiness in time? That's holiness in space. Holiness in time is the Sabbath. This morning, this could be a Sunday doing any other number of worthy endeavors. But you are here in church because it's Sunday. Or a holiday. How about a birthday or an anniversary? How about years sober? I happen to like Bonnie Raitt, the musician. I've followed her and enjoyed her for years. I read an article recently where she said, I've been sober for 34 years. That, my dear friends, is holiness in time. Not too long ago, I had the privilege of officiating at a wedding of two substance abusers who are recovering addicts. That is holiness, holiness in time. The Hebrew word for holy is kadosh. This is not a Hebrew lesson, but the root letters are kuf, dalet, shin. And Hebrew is built on root letters. Hebrew is very logical. There are inconsistencies as there is in any language, but for the most part, it is a very logical language. Typically, there are three root letters. Sometimes, rarely, there are two, and also rarely there are four. Basically, three. Kuf, dalet, shin, kadosh. You can hear the alliterative similarities in some of the words that are derived from those three root letters. Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Holy, holy, holy. Those are the words of Isaiah. Holy, holy, holy. Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. In Hebrew, Jews will gather for Shabbat and holidays and raise their glasses of wine or grape juice and sing Kiddush. Kiddush is not blessing wine or grape juice. It's not. It is sanctifying time, the Sabbath. And here you have an intersection between holiness in space and holiness in time. And that's Kiddush. Again, literally, you can hear the similarities, all built on the foundation of the roots. Kaddish is a declaration, not uncommonly, that is recited for loved ones who are no longer alive. It's a differentiation, but it adds intrinsic meaning and holiness to the memories that we hold of those given individuals. Kiddushin, same roots, is marriage, the holiness between two individuals who not only love each other, ideally share similar values with each other. Kiddushin, Kiddush, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. The idea of holiness. I say this with the full intensity and the deep respect of standing before you this morning, but may I say clearly and directly, struggle to apply holiness in your lives. It's a universal principle. Talk about it. Be mindful of it. You do it. The Hebrew, Kiddoshim Tihiyu, you do it. You pursue it. Don't wait for someone else to show you the way. You become that trailblazer. Holiness has a distinct possibility of adding further depth, spirituality, and awareness of your life. It has the distinct possibility of adding greater joy to your existence. And with that, I wish all of you a most blessed Sunday. Good morning, everyone.